Okay, we got it. Okay, I'm just going to introduce the Rebbitzin to give her proper Karasatov. Second, Rebbitzin Atara Gor made Aliyah with her family in her teens. She studied Jewish philosophy and psychology at Hebrew University, Tanakh and Torah Shabbat Peh, written in Orad Michlala, and studies on land of Israel at Machon Gavoa. She has been teaching women of all ages for many years at Michlala, Bat Ayin, Israelite, Machon Or, and in neighborhoods all over Jerusalem. She's a well-known women's teacher of Tanakh, Navi, Jewish history, women in the Bible, the teachings of the Maharal, and the Sefer Tuv Haaretz, which she will teach from today. Tuv Haaretz is a sefer on the land of Israel from Kabbalistic sources. The Rebbitzin Gor teaches weekly classes about Rachel Imenu from her book, Rachel, the matriarch, and Rachel's tome, and from the book Yisod Lekra, teachings about Rachel and her tome, written by Rav Halberstam, the Rebbe from Sprepkov. Her classes are held at Kever Rachel every Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Israel time. She lives in Jerusalem with some of her children, and unfortunately, her beloved husband and mentor passed away a few years ago. So I feel very, very privileged and honored to introduce to you the Rebbitzin. Rebbitzin, I'm going to put myself on mute and I'm going to stop my video so we can see you. Are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
I'm very honored to talk to this group. I've been introduced to this group through Yudit Shamrot, who is one of my most closest students in Kever Rachel, and she said that she wanted me to talk about Tuva Aretz. Tuva Aretz is a book by a student of Arizal, and it's actually very sensational. Some people may find it very hard to grasp, but the sources, the Arizal, Rav Chaim Vital, the writings of Avram Azulai. These are very basic sources, and to understand really what we lost, we have to really understand what Eretz Yisrael is. And this is actually the only book that I could find that really sketched it out, etched it out, explained it in detail that we can really understand. And so what I did was I sent a folder to everybody on the WhatsApp. I hope they got it. What I'm doing is I'm reading from a translation of parts of Tuva Aretz that are very interesting and maybe would widen our view of what really Eretz Yisrael is and what Chutz La'aretz is. And the Chutz La'aretz is not one thing either. There's levels to Chutz La'aretz. Chutz La'aretz is leveled and Eretz Yisrael is leveled. And no one knows about these levels. It's mamish, like I say, sensational information. So I will start reading from Tuva Aretz on the pamphlet that I sent you. Rav Nosson Shapira, born in 1606, passed away in 1666. The book came out in 2006, so that was like 400 years after his birth. And he wrote the book in 1655. He was the Rav Rashi Ashkenazi in Yerushalayim, and there was a great famine here, and he went to Chutz La'aretz to collect money, and a rabbi in Chutz La'aretz says, if you want to collect money, then maybe you should write a book about Eretz Yisrael, and this is the book that he wrote, which was published in Venice in 1655. So I'm reading from passages. Those who have the folder in front of them can look, and those who don't, they'll listen to what we're reading here. Tuva Aretz is a mystical journey in understanding just how pivotal the land of Israel is for each Jew and for the world. This is one of the only books in existence explaining on the deepest Kabbalistic level the greatness of the land of Israel in contrast to the countries of the 70 nations. The book explains the necessity of every Jew to live in the land of Israel, because by doing so, he brings down Shekhinah to the land of Israel, while his fellow Jews in exile are forcing the Shekhinah to descend through various angels and conduits to foreign nations. That means the Jew that lives in America, in France, in Russia, wherever he lives, the mitzvahs that he does brings down Shekhinah to foreign countries, and that strengthens the power of foreign countries. Every Jew certainly should have this book on his bookshelf to help them understand the holiness of the land. Now, I am moving on for those who have the Choveret to Tuva Aretz, chapter 1. And here you can see there's a picture of the following map that he writes in his book, a spiritual map of how the worlds work. The first chapter of Tuva Aretz explains how the land of Israel receives its spiritual sustenance directly from God, while the 70 nations receive it through their respective angels. The land of Israel, when it's all conquered, is 400 parsangs on 400 parsangs. And around the 400 parsangs is 2,000 cubits. And after 2,000 cubits, all the angels of the world are waiting for their sustenance. You can see here, there's the land of Israel in the center. And then around it is 2,000 cubits. And then around it are the angels of all the world. So the whole world is receiving its sustenance through a very small window. This window is 500 cubits on 500 cubits on top of the Kodesh Kodashim. This is the window through which the sustenance comes through the whole world. There is an entranceway called Gvilon in the firmament above the land of Israel, in the sky, 500 cubits by 500 cubits, like a small window on top of a pyramid. The 500 cubits are parallel to the Temple Mount. Now, in the middle of this is an open entrance, which is as big as Jerusalem, and at the bottom of the window is an area which Bezrat Hashem one day will be 400 parsangs on 400 parsangs. The open window is called Gvilon at the top, and the total circumference of the land of Israel at the bottom is called Megadon. So this sustenance flows through the window on top of the Temple Mount, and then it flows first through the land of Israel. And through the land of Israel, it divides into 70 different sources of souls, parallel to the 70 souls who went down with Yaakov to Egypt, or the 70 elders who sat on the Sanhedrin. So there's 70 souls of Israel, and the sustenance is coming down, hitting land of Israel, and then divided into 70 sources. So these sources give the sustenance to the Jewish people, and they are called Sha'arei Tzedek. Now, after the land of Israel has taken the sustenance that it needs, then the sustenance starts to move out beyond the land of Israel, and then on the side around the land of Israel stands in the upper worlds the angels of the nations. Now, each angel has a certain part where he's waiting to get the sustenance that belongs to him. And no angel can take the sustenance from another country. Now, the amount of sustenance that each country receives is according to the judgment of that country, and also to the Jews and the mitzvahs that is done in that country. So when the Jews were in Spain, there was a lot of sustenance in Spain. And when the Jews were in Europe or Germany, there was a lot of sustenance in Germany. And when the Jews are in America, what they're doing is they are pulling the sustenance to their country. And that is a very hard gezerah, because the foreign countries receive that power instead of Am Yisrael here. In the time of the temple, The sustenance flowed first to the land of Israel, and then there was a border of 2,000 cubits in the spiritual levels in each direction, like the border of Shabbat we have around a city. Around the border of the land of Israel in the upper worlds, the 70 nations are waiting for their sustenance. The sustenance flows through the small window, it goes through the big window to the land of Israel, and then it divides into the nations. The land of Israel is divided into 71 channels. Each person is a different source. So how could that be? So the answer is, it's like Rabbi Tzadok. Rabbi Tzadok, who only ate the water from how do you call it, from the Chartzanim. He ate very little, but everybody knew that as long as Rabbi Tzadok was alive, Beitar would not fall. The minute that Rabbi Tzadok was killed, even though he himself needed no sustenance, then even though he needed no sustenance, but the minute that he died, Beitar fell. So even though it seems like Eretz Yisrael is poorer and has less resources and less money and whatever, even so, all of the countries are receiving their sustenance through the land of Israel. In the time of the temple, when everything wasn't an ideal situation, the window to the heaven was open. However, when the temple was destroyed, this model changed. And God put a blue curtain on the window, just like a parochet that we put on the Aron Kodesh. There's a blue curtain on top of the window, this 500 Gvilon window, so that impure powers will not enter, because the land is empty, the land is shmama, so we can't have any impure powers entering here. But on the other hand, if all the sustenance of the whole world is coming through a parochet, it's going to be less than it was in the time of the temple. The more commandments you perform, now this is something that is actually very shocking. The more commandments you perform in the countries of the 70 nations, the more you will suffer, because you are bringing down sustenance to foreign angels and foreign countries. And this is called as if it is idolatry. The original model from the time of the temple has changed, because the holy presence is flowing instead of to the land of Israel to various foreign states where Jews live and they prosper. Like we mentioned, if there were Jews in Spain, then Spain was a prosperous country. However, when all the Jews will return, or even most of them will return, then the Shekhinah will come back with them, and we will return to the model that we mentioned before, and the parochet, this blue curtain on the Gvilon entrance, will be taken away. Now, on the top of the Gvilon entrance, where all the sustenance comes, we have the 10 sfirot, or the 10 firmaments, one higher than the other. And they are known collectively as the curtains of the sanctuary, because these are even more translucent levels, rising all the way up to Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, which is on top of the Gvilon window. The eyes of God are upon the land of Israel. That means that all these firmaments function to keep evil away from the land of Israel. Because of the Jews' sins, the power of evil surrounding the atmosphere of the land of Israel drew closer. That means that there's like Gvilon, it's like a very thin entrance, but slowly the Aveirot, the sins, cause the entrance to become thinner and thinner and thinner, till on Tisha B'Av, that the Gvilon entrance closed totally. There was total disconnection between the upper worlds, the throne of glory, and the bottom worlds. And then the temple was destroyed. It was the sins of the Jewish people that caused the gateway of heaven to close. Then, so to speak, the land of Israel lost its connection with heavenly Jerusalem. The power of evil ruled, and the temple was destroyed. The Gvilon gate did not close instantaneously. Rather, as Jews continued engaging in their sins, they brought the power of evil gradually closer until everything was cut off from holiness. The temple was destroyed. The 10 tribes were exiled, followed by the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. The land of Israel is God's chosen portion. Why must we ask how this evil could enter? Let's draw an analogy of a master whose slave ran away to someone else's house. The master goes to the house and takes hold of his slave and leaves with him. The master is a foreign god to whom the Jewish people had enslaved themselves, offering him incense and sacrifices. At that point, the evil master entered the land and destroyed and took the slave, and then the evil master left with the slave, and the Gvilon entrance immediately opened once again. I'm turning now, for those who have the booklet in front of you, to chapter 6. People in the land of Israel and those in 70 nations. This chapter can help us understand why different groups of Jewish people do not understand one another. The souls of the Jews who reside outside the land of Israel stem from the angel called Sandalphon. Sandalphon is Sandal. It's the angel on the lowest level. The souls are ruled by the realm of the Ophanim, the realm of the rotating angels, and the realm of the world of action. That's called Olam Ha'asiyah. And they have a lower angel. They are in a lower place, and they're called the house of Jacob. They're also called Eved Ivri, which is numerical value of snake. Eved is 282, Ivri is 76, that's 358, and Nachash is 358, which means that somebody who's living in Chutz La'aretz is living in the level of an Eved. He's called Yaakov, and there's many evil powers in Chutz La'aretz, very sadly, that surround him. This is because they are ruled by the power of the husks. Yet those who dwell in the land of Israel, their soul emanate from the world of Metatron, Metat. And this is hinted from the fact that the land of the deer, Eretz Hatzvi, is the numerical value of Chanoch Metatron. Eretz Hatzvi is Eretz Yisrael, and it's the same numerical value as Chanoch, who turned into the angel Metatron. And this world in Eretz Yisrael, we're ruled by the world of formation, Olam HaYetzirah. What is the difference between Olam HaAsiyah and Olam HaYetzirah? Olam HaAsiyah is ruled by a different angel. It has more klipot. It's at a lower level. And we're going to soon see the various differences between them.
Rebbetzin, can you explain to people what klipot is, so people understand what you mean by that?
Right. Klipot are husks. Like we have an onion. The onion is really created. It's many, many husks, one on top of the other. And then we peel the husks. Now, in Chutz La'aretz, which is the world of Asiyah, evil is greater than good, because the husks there are very strong. It's the land of the snake, and the powers there are ruled. The ruling powers, evil has an edge over good. In the world in Eretz Yisrael, which is the world of Yetzirah, formation, the situation is that good and evil are 50-50. They're exactly weighed one against the other. No one is above another. But in Eretz, the world of Yetzirah, it's called the world of Dibur, of speech. That's why Eretz Yisrael is the land of the Nevuah, the Nevi'im, the speech of God, the speech of man. And Eretz Yisrael has the most telephones per 1,000 people in the whole world, because Eretz Yisrael is the world of Dibur. And we're under a different level. We're not under the angel Sandlafon, we're under Ledra Metatron, we're under Yud Ke Vav Ke. There's no foreign angel actually here. And because we live in a different milieu, a different world, then things work differently. Now, I'd like to continue to read in chapter 6, the translation of Tuva Aretz. People who live in the land of Israel, their souls are from the world of formation. In the countries of the nations, the souls are connected to the world of action. Behold, a man dwelling outside the land of Israel has a soul that stems from the world of action. When he merits entering the land, he is given a new soul from the world of formation, which envelops his old soul on the first night that he slumbers in the land of Israel. Thus he receives two souls, the world of action and the world of formation. That means when somebody comes, it is in the intention of the person to stay in the land of Israel, which is the decisive factor in receiving the new level of soul. If someone comes for a visit and does not intend to live in Israel, he will not receive the new soul. Even if he intends to stay here for a year or return to the countries of the nations, he will not receive the new soul. According to Jewish law, one can tell whether or not a person has an additional soul if he keeps Yom Tov Sheni Shel Shloshet Regalim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. Such a person has a soul from the world of action. Even if a person sojourns in the land of Israel but does not intend to stay in Israel permanently, he will not receive the soul of formation. Rather, he will keep his former soul from the world of action. If a person keeps one day of the festivals, it means that the person has received the soul from the world of formation. Therefore, his level is doubly potent. That means that what we do in one day in Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz is done in 2 days, because the soul from Yetzirah is doubly potent, Pi Shnayim, than the soul from Chutz La'aretz. And he's able to rectify in 1 day what it takes those who reside in the land of the nations 2 days. The Jews in the land of Israel have the soul of Metatron, which has double potency to rectify spirituality, compared to those who live in Chutz La'aretz, who reside in the world of Sandlafon, the world of action. The world of formation is the world of speech. How did God formulate things? When God said a word in the holy tongue, then that object or creature was created. The land of Israel was created in the tongue, in the word of the world of formation, which is the world of speech. This is the land of prophecy. But in this country, we are in the land of speech, and the temple is on a higher level than land of Israel. So the temple, we enter a third world, and that's called Olam Habriya, the world of creation. And in the world of creation, which is the Temple Mount, good is more than evil. That means in formation, evil and good is 50-50. But in the world of Beriah, which is the Temple Mount, we get to an area where Hatov mitgaber al hara. The Temple Mount is on a higher level than the land of Israel. The 500 by 500 cubits under the window of Gvilon, the area of the Temple Mount, is connected to the world of Beriah, which is the world of thought. That means that in the temple, when the Kohen doesn't have the right thought, even though he did the whole Korban is 100% the Seder, everything he did according to the law, but his thought was not correct, He thought he was doing an ola and it's a chatas, or he thought he was doing asham and it's an ola. Then the korban is pasul. Pigul, it's called. Pigul means the thought was incorrect. And in the world of Berea, the main thing is your thought. On top of that world is the world of Atzilus, which rests between the cherubs and the Holy of Holies, which is where the sustenance flows from the window or gateway of heaven to our world. Now, the reason we would think that somebody who comes from Chutz La'aretz to do Aliyah or to live here permanently in the land of Israel, they would lose their soul of Asiya, and they would receive a new soul of Yetzirah, which is connected to the land of Israel. But the reason that God does not extract the soul of action, that means that somebody who lives in Chutz La'aretz, in Eretz Yisrael, and made Aliyah, he has double on double potency. I'll explain you why. The world of action is potency 1. The world of Metatron formation is double. And the world of the person that made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, he is at 4-fold. Why? Because he has 2 souls. He has the soul of Yetzirah, and he has the soul of Asiya. And God does not extract that soul of action and remove that soul, because that soul brought the person to the land of Israel. Therefore, God takes the soul from the world of action and envelops it with the soul of the world of formation, and he receives a double soul. So that means that a person who came from Chutz La'aretz and did Aliyah has the highest level of potency that is possible. Now we're going into chapter 7. And this is to show that Chutz La'aretz is not one thing, just like Eretz Yisrael is divided into 10 Kedushot. We didn't go into that, but at least into 3 worlds, Olam Yetzirah, Olam Berea, Olam Yetzilus. Chutz La'aretz is also leveled. And the level of Chutz La'aretz is dependent on where you are in Chutz La'aretz. And I'm reading a straight translation from the book that we put out, chapter 7, pages 55 to 57, the 206th edition. The blemish of those living in the land of Israel, of those leaving the land of Israel, is divided into 5 levels. If one merits living in the land of Israel, he has no husks enveloping his soul. However, if we move to what Chazal called Syria or Surya, those are the lands around the land of Israel. The first level of husks envelops one's soul is for those who live in Syria, outside the area of Damascus. In addition, this level includes all countries surrounding the land of Israel. Every country has one ministering angel, which is their representative in the heavens. Yet all 70 of these angels take command from Satan or Rahav. Rahav is the angel of Egypt or the Ishmaelites, and Satan is the angel of the Christians. We have 70 nations, and they're divided, according to Kabbalistic sources, into 2 different parts. One is the Ishmaelite nations, and they're under the angel of Rahav, and Rahav is the angel of Egypt. And then there's Satan, and those are the 35 nations, which are the Christian nations, and they're under the rule of Satan. Hhowever, in each country, you also have the rule of Satan and Rahav, and we also have what we call Olam Hachmurot. Olam Hachmurot. The Arabs reside under the angel Rahav, while the Christian countries reside under Satan. Because they come from different spiritual sources, they do not assimilate or integrate. Just look what's going on in Europe. In addition to the commanding angels, Rav is directly in charge of the borders of Egypt, which is 400 parsecs square. Satan has 4 kingdoms which he rules over. In each of these kingdoms, he has a specific concubine. The 4 concubines are called Lilit, Naamah, Even Maskit, and Agrat Bat Machlat. That means that Satan rules according to 4 main sources of power, and these sources are Beit Rimmon in Damascus. Beit Rimmon is where the The cemetery is of Damascus, where actually Rav Chaim Vital is buried in Beit Rimon, and that's a main center of Satan. The second center of Satan is Tyre, Sor in Lebanon. The third is Malta or Rhodes, and the fourth is Granada. These four kingdoms are the source of the four superpowers, and each of these powers rests on the throne of a concubine. If one resides in Syria, outside the area of Beit Rimon and Damascus, minute you leave Eretz Yisrael, you receive a soul from Sandlafon. You left the world of Metatron, you receive a soul from Sandlafon, and is enveloped with a husk of the world of exchanges, a second husk of the world of Satan, and a third husk from the world of Rahab. So if somebody lives in Chutz La'aretz around Eretz Yisrael, they have three husks. One called Olam Hashmurot, world of exchanges, one called world of Satan, and one called world of Rahab. The second level is for those who dwell in the mainland, far from Syria, Europe, for example, which is connected to Asia. It's not over the sea. So that means that all countries that are connected to Eretz Yisrael, but they're not over the sea, they're the second level. And what is that level? Their soul descends to the level of Sandlafon, and then enveloped by one husk from the world of exchanges, two husks from the world of Satan, and a fourth husk from the world of Rahab. So those who live in Syria have three husks. Those who live in Europe have four husks. Those who live beyond the sea, America, Australia, England, South America, they're on a lower level because they have another added husk. The soul descends to the kingdom of Sandlafon, then is enveloped by one husk from the world of exchanges, three husks from the world of Satan, and one husk from the world of Rahab. This explains why Judaism in America is on some level different than Judaism in Europe, because they have an extra husk to deal with, and then immediately puts them down on a lower level. Europe is more holy than America or England or Australia. Anything that's beyond the sea, that's further away from the land of Israel, is less holy. The fourth level is the four kingdoms of Satan, which we mentioned. That's Rhodes, Beit Rimon and Damascus, Tyre and Lebanon, and Granada. These come, they who have come to these countries, they go down to the source of Sandlafon. They receive one husk from the world of exchanges, four husks from Satan, and one husk from Rahab, which means they have six husks. And if you go to Egypt, which is the worst of the worst of the whole world is Egypt, with 9 husks, one from the world of exchanges, 4 husks from the world of Satan, and 4 husks from the world of Rahab. That means altogether 1 and 4 and 4 is 9. And that's why Rambam says that you shouldn't live in Egypt, even though he did. But there's so many, and also the Arizal lived in Egypt, but there's so many husks in Egypt. It's such a horrible place. It's so far from God that it's very, very hard to overcome all the klipot. Anybody who leaves the land of Israel with the intention of dwelling outside the land of Israel will have the following experience as soon as he leaves 4 cubits outside of the border. Immediately, your soul is changed. This explains a very important source in the Midrash. It says, when the sages left the land of Israel, they tore their clothes. One rents clothes at the time of death. However, the sages realized that once they left the land of Israel, they were losing their soul from etat, from the world of formation. So they rent their garments. Once you leave 4 cubits outside the border, the soul from the world of action enters in the place of the soul that originated from the world of formation. Then one has a different amount of angels. In the land of Israel, one is surrounded by 22,000 angels. However, in the land of the 70 nations, one's soul only receives 11,000 angels. Again, we see the potency of the land of Israel is double Then Chutz La'aretz. Here we have 22,000 angels. And when you go to Chutz La'aretz, half of it is taken away. Subsequently, he is enclosed by one encasing from the world of exchanges, another husk from Satan, and a third from Ra. That's if you go to Syria. If one leaves the land of Israel with intentions to return quickly, leaving behind his wife and children in Israel, that person does not lose his soul level of the world of formation. Even in countries of the nations, such a person keeps one day. He doesn't keep the second day of Galuyos for the Shloshet Regalim, which proves that he still has the soul level of the world of formation. Nonetheless, his soul is enclosed by the world of action, which watches his soul of formation from impurity. That is why he observes Yom Tov as if in the land of Israel. This is true since he intends to return. And if his soul level is from the realm of formation, it is all for his benefit. If it is not so, then immediately upon his departure from the land of Israel, his soul of formation would be surrounded by the husks, and they would defile his soul. Therefore, God has mercy on him and encloses his soul level of formation with a soul level of action before the husks have a chance to attach themselves to the core and defile it. Rather, the husks attach to the soul of action, which is a protective barrier for his soul level. A person who comes from the land of the 70 nations to the land of Israel, but wants to go back, enters with the soul of action, but does not receive the soul of formation. Therefore, he must observe all the holidays as they are kept abroad. Every person is judged whether they are worthy of getting a new soul. This is maybe the reason of a lack of communication. One cannot even see the difference of the soul as people don't even understand one another. We're living in different places. Even a person living in Europe is in a different place than a person living in America. Even a person living in Egypt is in a totally different place than a person living in England. So because people are living with different husks, different level of husks, and different angels, or lack of husks, and they're different worlds, one in the world of formation, world of action, it's very hard to explain one to another things that we hardly understand, that we've never heard before in our lives, that we don't grasp with our senses, that are beyond our seeing, hearing, and even understanding conceptions. So this is why I think that people have to understand that even though there are Jews all over the world, we still have to try and strive, even though we're coming from very different places and we're under very different hashpa'ot, that we still have the one soul of Am Yisrael. We're still one, and we still hope, Ezrat Hashem, that everybody will come here and make it, because here we have higher and more potent spiritual levels, double, triple, quadruple. Rabbis who left the borders of Israel to go to Babylonia, when they crossed the borders, they tore their clothes. When Yaakov went to the house of Lavan, the angels that were with him departed, so he received only half the amount and a different level, only 11,000. These spiritual laws do not change. The two Tanaic scholars in the time of the Babylonian Talmud tore their clothes because they knew they lost their soul. I think with that, I'd like to end. If there are any maybe questions, there's much more here than I mentioned. I think I mentioned maybe some of the more sensational points, but there are other points that are known maybe better. Maybe if there are any questions, or we hope to put out this book in English, B'ezrat Hashem, as fast as possible. It's not so easy. And we're not going to include all the sources, because to understand the Arizal is really, really very hard. Most of the sources that I gave here were from the Ramak of Moshe Cordovero. That's the Pshat of the Kabbalah, and that's much, much easier to understand. Thank you, and you should all have a good fast. And
Rebbitzin Heights, Nomi Greenberg. I'm going to open it up for questions in 1 second. just if people can raise their hand so I can do it in a way that I can, so not everybody speaks together. I wanted to ask you, first of all, Rav Chaim Vital, I don't know if you know that he actually is in Eretz Yisrael now, Rav Chaim Vital. He was brought to Eretz Yisrael, but it was a very big thing with the Israeli government, and they're not allowed to say where he's buried. But when you go to this area where there's many tzaddikim, because a few of them were taken out at the same time, it says that tzaddikim are buried here. So I don't know if you know that.
I can tell you. I can tell you one thing, that Rav Chaim Vital had two graves, one in Sfat and one in Damascus. He didn't know where he would be buried. So what happened was, in the end, he was buried in Damascus, but all his writings that we have, most of the writings were hidden in his grave in Sfat. And they were taken out of the ground. They were taken out of the ground.
He was taken out of Damascus. I don't know if you know this.
Yes. Okay. I'm just saying.
No, but not in Sfat. It's not in Sfat.
Wherever he is, that's where he's
I was
supposed to
taken
be.
there multiple times by different tzaddikim, and I was told where it is. This area was Chaim Vital. It was taken out by a very big family, and what happened was, originally it said it was him, and then the Israeli government had big problems with Damascus over it, because the body, and then Rabbanim said, how could you take a body out without doing this without permission? But he is now buried in there. So I have a picture. I can send you the picture. I'll send you the picture of exactly where he's buried. But before I open it up to other people, I just have a quick question. You said that Europe has less klippos than America. My question to you is, if you look, maybe that was before World War II, but if you look now, the Europe doesn't seem to be any more, the European Jews don't seem to have any less klippas. You see intermarriage at massive rates, just like you see in America. You see, all the different things that we're seeing, in United States as we're seeing in Europe. There's not much difference today between European Jews.
These laws are like physics. They don't change with time. That means that the amount of klipot in a certain country, in a certain area, they stay where they are. So Europe is less than America. It doesn't mean that there's going to be less intermarriage or less assimilation. It means that there's something in Europe that is on a higher level than in America. It doesn't mean that the Jews of Europe are in a better shape. Maybe they're in the worst shape. Look what happened in the Shoah. I'm not saying that history may change the lot of the Jews in their respective countries, but the laws of the klipot of the Kabbalah do not change. They do not change.
Rabbi Pinchas Winston speaks about this idea that you brought up, the idea that we Jews in Chutz La'aretz who learn Torah, that we actually give the sparks of holiness to the nations of the world. We actually give them the koyach.
But Pinchas is quoting from two words.
Right.
I know that.
I'm going to open it up. So Rhonda, I see that you're first. Rhonda, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
I heard recently that, I don't know how exactly to put it, but I think that we're held to a higher level of observance if we're in Eretz Yisrael than if we're in Chutz La'aretz. And I'm wondering if what you just explained is the reason why.
Exactly true. If you're here and you have no husks, and you have a double or a triple or a quadruple soul, then you're Beheichalo Shel Melech. You're in the palace of the king, and you're asked to act on a higher level. Definitely, there's no question about it. No question.
Thank you.
Alyssa, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I know the Rebbe of Lubavitch said that we are trying to bring the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael all over the world to make everything into Eretz Yisrael, and then Israel will become the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So and that's why people are doing mitzvahs. So you said that the mitzvahs are kind of lost.
I don't know what source the Rebbe from Chabad is quoting. I'm just quoting Tuva Aretz. I'm not actually very familiar with Chabad. Tuva Aretz is the Arizal. There's no refuting the Arizal. No one would dare to refute the Arizal, Rav Chaim Vital, Ramak, and Rav Avam Azulai. So when Rav Chaim Vital, who wrote Tuva Aretz, Rav Nosson Shapiro, who was a student of Rav Chaim Vital, wrote, he was a student of Rav Yaakov Tzemach, and Rav Yaakov Tzemach was connected to Rav Chaim Vital. So this is straight down from the Arizal. These are sources that they copied, they knew, they heard, they were in the Beit Midrash. It's shocking because these things are not in the street. I just want to tell you maybe something that you can understand how shocking it is. I gave this talk years ago to girls in a hotel, the King's Hotel in Yerushalayim. I think it was 10 or 15 years ago. The girls were so shocked by what I had to say. They said the rabbis in Chutz La'aretz never mentioned this. There must be a mistake. And they shouted me down to such a degree that I was so afraid. I mean, I left my tape there. I picked up actually, and I almost ran away because they'd never heard such a thing. I can only quote the book that I put out with the help of my deceased husband and rabbis who gave us haskamot, and we did exactly what the book said. This is what the book says. When a person lives in Chutz La'aretz, he brings down the Shechina to Tumah, and that gives power to the nations, and that is an Avera. Now, we can be mashpia on the whole world, even in Eretz Yisrael. The first temple, we were mashpia on the whole world. People came, Malkat Shfa, people came to have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. There was no need for us to spread out in the world. And that's what's happening slowly again. God is folding his wings and bringing the Shekhinah back, and there's no need for that anymore. We can be here, and the whole world will be at our feet. So basically, what Nosson Shapiro says in Tuva Aretz, quoting Rav Chaim Vital, he's saying that Jews of Chutz La'aretz are pulling the Shekhinah to Chutz La'aretz, and that's not a good thing. Right. And I don't know. I don't want to compare it to the Rebbe from Chabad because I don't know what source he's quoting. I just quote the books that I put out and I received a skama to put out.
Thank you, Rebbetzin. Esther, I think you have a question. Esther, do you want to ask a question? Esther Cameron, do you want to unmute yourself? And then we're going to just do the Shmir Salashon. Esther?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Rebbetzin Gur if she could tell us a little bit more about the Olam HaTmurot. What is that? What does that term really mean?
Rebbetzin? Is she still there? Did she get kicked off?
She's on mute.
No, she's on mute. Go ahead.
No, somebody muted me. Okay. I wanted to say hello to Esther because she comes to Kever with me every Wednesday. Olam HaTmurot is very well etched out in the stories of Rabbi Nachman. It's the world of exchanges, the exchange children. Instead of Am Yisrael having the wealth and the hashpa'ah, the nations have the wealth and the hashpa'ah. The midwife switched the children to see what would come of it, right? That's the wording of Rabbi Nachman in the exchanged children. And then when the world was switched, like Lavan, he switched Rachel with Leah, and he tore the world apart. Rav Nachman says that had the first night been with Rachel, she would have immediately conceived Yosef, and there would have been no mix-up because Yosef would have been Bechor, and they would have accepted him. And if he would have been beloved, it would have been okay because he would be in the Bechor, and the Kutonet Pasim is the Kutonet of a Bechor, and everything, there would have been no machlokus whatsoever. However, because Lavan switched Rachel with Leah, that's the world of exchanges, switched good with bad. You don't know what's good, you don't know what's bad. You don't know who's privileged, you don't know who's not. You don't know who has Shechina. You don't know who is the world of lies. You don't know what a lie is. You don't know what the truth is. Everything becomes very, very mixed up. That's the world of exchanges. And the epitome of that is Lavan. Lavan, he exchanged my wages tenfold, and some say hundredfold. Exchanges the money. That evil receives the money and the good are poor. I mean, this whole world of exchanges that the evil, they're rich, they're influential, they're powerful, while the good are poor and downtrodden, and no one looks at them. This is what we call the world of exchanges.
Wow. Wow, I can do this, like, I can go on for hours here, but really, it's, wow. Rebbetzin, I don't know what to say. It's like, I want everybody to hear this shiur. We all have to hear this. This is unbelievable.
You have
we
to
don't even
thank.
Begin, we don't even begin to understand. Yeah,
you have to thank Yudi Chamrat because she told me.
I know. You have to come
go.
back, Rebbetzin. You have to come back and speak to us again.
That's right.
You have to speak to us. Maybe you'll come back. Maybe you'll come back before, if you'll come back right before Rosh Hashanah, just to give us a class on on coming into the Chagim, if you would do that. Wow, this was amazing. Does anybody have any more questions? We're just going to go to.
I have a very, very little question.
Go ahead, Javier.
So,
go ahead.
You know that I'm very extreme in a lot of the way I think and what we do and the way we live. But I just have a question for the Rebbetzin about, we don't posek according to the Kabbalah, and even though the concepts you're saying are emet lamita, I always feel very careful about people's tafkids and being careful for people who live in Chutz La'aretz. They have jobs. People have jobs there. Now, I'm not talking about jobs in terms of parnasa. I'm talking about like jobs that's where Hashem put them. And sometimes, and there's rabbanim who are there, and there's reasons why they don't bring this up. You understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry, my camera's not on.
But Javier, there was reasons why the Jews also didn't go into the Meraglim didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael. Hashem didn't take us out of Mitzrayim. I'm not saying anything. Hashem didn't take us out of Mitzrayim to live in Chutz La'aretz. And the idea that we have jobs to do in Chutz La'aretz, if we understand that we're really, Hashem is everything. Hashem can do anything, right? So it's the fact that we're shlichim from the Rabban Shalom, that someone else could be a shaliach. You know what I mean? We wouldn't need the jobs in Chutz La'aretz if we were all in Eretz Yisrael. We wouldn't have to do anything in Chutz La'aretz because we would all be in Eretz Yisrael. So all the jobs would be in Eretz Yisrael. I'm not saying that chas v'shalom, that people have reasons. They have elderly parents, they have parnasa issues. There's all types of issues. But the ultimate is that every Jew has to start thinking about coming to Eretz Yisrael. There's nothing to think about. Everybody's been saying that. Rav Itamar Schwartz has been saying that. Rav Kanievsky, Chaim Kanievsky has been saying it. Rav Arush has been saying it. Everybody's been saying it. So yeah, we have tafkidim, but we also have to be honest with ourselves. It's true. It's very interesting that she said that the world outside of Israel is a world of action. You look at us in Chutz La'aretz, it's very much like that. It's very much like this concept of making and producing and having wealth and creating more and doing all these different things. That's it. That's what it is. But I'm not chas v'sholom, like everybody has issues. They have young children, people are worried. It's normal. It's true. But it's the time. The Shekhinah is departing. I once heard a Rav say, why was it, Rav Pinchas Winston, he said, every Yaakov Avinu understood something that no generation since then has understood. He understood that when the Shekhinah was leaving, it was time to leave, that there was no more protection over the Jews wherever they were. He understood that when he left Lavan. He understood that when he heard them with their anti-Semitism talking about the fact that he took their wealth, he understood the Shekhinah was departing and he left. And he said that no generation since has understood that concept. And yeah, it's true that Rabbanim don't talk about going to Chutz La'aretz, about going to Eretz Yisrael, but they also didn't speak, the spies also didn't speak about going to Eretz Yisrael, and they were Gedolim, they were Nisim, and they didn't understand that point. So, as I was reading from Rabbi Itamar Schwartz this Shabbos, that the neshamas are thinner, we're thinner, we keep getting thinner and thinner. So it's hard for us to have pshitus or it's hard for us to be in certain ways because the neshama is thinner now. So you're right, chas v'shalom, but the thought, the idea has to start coming because we're seeing crazy anti-Semitism. We're seeing it. We can't ignore it. If we ignored it, we would be putting.
To that?
Go ahead.
I see my tafkid when I brought out this book to bring out something that's really archaic. This is archaic knowledge. I don't want to go into a machlokus with anybody, or it's archaic knowledge. It's from the Arizal. People don't know it. When I saw the book in 1999, I immediately wanted to translate it. In the meantime, I put it out in Hebrew, and my husband died, and my mother died, and my mother-in-law died, and everybody was around just passed away, and things changed, and I stopped dead in my tracks, and I can't move forward. But the real intention of Tuv Haaretz was to put it out in English for the English-speaking public, English Jewish-speaking public in America. That was the main reason. I hope, Bezrat Hashem, if you give me a bracha, I will continue to do so. I don't see myself as gunning into any kind of machlokas, except putting out this book and explaining the concepts. That's it. And if we understand the concepts very clearly, and they're not so simple, I just showed you a very small part. This is not simple knowledge. It takes time to understand it. It is not something that you learn one time. Maybe you learn 10 times, and then slowly you integrate it into your personality. So I see myself, my tafkid is to get this stuff out, and I hope maybe this is a start, like Judith said. You have so much stuff, get your stuff out, and then people will maybe listen and understand. So Darabat Somkal.
Thank you, Rebbitzin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I didn't mean it all. I didn't mean it all at all to like make him a chokad, and I definitely give you a bracha. Sorry, my camera turned off. I definitely give you a bracha that Bezrat Hashem that will get out there and it will strengthen people. And Bezrat Hashem with tefillah, and definitely strengthen our tefillah that Bezrat Hashem will all come together very soon.
Amen. 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 Okay, I'm going to do 37. I'm going to do the Shmir Solashon for day 37. Please, let's stay on just to listen.
Welcome to day 37. Today, the Chafetz Chaim discusses humor. And the crucial point about humor is that its enjoyment is dependent upon which side of the joke you're on. And he says, if the person is on the receiving end of a joke, and for some reason, the people say, but don't worry, it's just a joke. They might have laughed because you did something foolish, or because a boss or someone of power said, well, if you don't do this, well, I guess we'll see you, taking a rather long holiday, and you laugh along so as not to seem like a bad sport, but somehow you just know deep down when you're on the receiving end of this remark, it's not that all amusing, and sometimes you may get the feeling that there's more than a kernel of truth in that joke. And it's this point that the Chafetz Chaim addresses to the person who, after speaking Lashon Hara, says, come on, I was just joking.